Hi, good evening, fellow adventurers, and welcome. My name is CO Matt, Pathfinder Infinite bestseller, Inquisitor, class document guide. Thank you so much to everyone who supported me with that. I had a really fun time developing that class, bringing it over from Pathfinder First Edition, and for the most part, I'm very satisfied with the result. There were only a couple of feats here and there that were a bit sus, but for the most part, we've done a bang-up job, and I'm really proud of how far we've made it and how successful we've been. Let's see if we can continue that role. So let's talk about tanking. And this is a concept that's been brought up a lot in Pathfinder 2e design space. And as someone who's been playing Pathfinder 2nd Edition since its inception in 2019, in addition to playing many video games where the concept of tanking has different definitions, including War Thunder, where you literally drive tanks around. I wanted to further elucidate my thoughts on the topic and give some insight as to how I would go about tanking in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. So let's take a little history lesson as we learn what is a tank in real life. So tanks were developed midway through World War I. What people had thought of was, hey, machine guns are really good, but we have to put them in nests. What if we could move these machine guns such that we can just roll over everybody and then just shoot people on the move? Thus was born the tank. I believe the Mark IV was one of the first tanks ever created. It was just like a brick with treads and a gun stapled to it, but it wasn't very good. Tanks were mostly wastes of metal at this point in time. They were very slow, and they weren't as functional as they had as the designers had wanted them to be. But they did have a little bit of utility, as in they can just roll over the trenches, just tread all over them by the end of the war. And in the interwar period, tank design had evolved somewhat. You had the French. I had the best tank at the onset of World War II. Wow, those are words. French having good military tactics. No one ever thought of that, right? Yeah, but the French Samua S-35 was a very good tank. It could block Panzer II's 20 millimeters from the front, which was excellent. And as World War II progressed, basically the four major nations, excluding Japan, of course, because they were in a jungle the entire time, had rapid increases in the development of their tanks over the war. So if you take a look at Germany, you had the Panzer II evolving into the Panzer III, Panzer IV, Panther, Tiger, and then eventually the King Tiger by the end of the war. You also had the Sturmgeschütz and the Jagdpanther, the Ferdinand, LOL, the worst tank of the war. And then you had America with the various Shermans. They had the 75 millimeter Sherman at the beginning of the war, and by the end we had the M4A3 E8 HVSS, most notably seen in the movie Fury. And these tanks would vary by nation, and they would have different doctrines and different design principles based on those doctrines. So the Soviets had the T-34, which was revolutionary in that it featured sloped armor, and they just made a lot of them because they were very easy to make. And basically Russian troops during that war were expendable, as you can see by the death counts. So it fit the doctrine very well. What I wanted to most notably include was Great Britain's tank doctrine during this war. So they had two main classifications of tanks. They had cruiser tanks and infantry tanks. When we think about tanks, normally we refer to infantry tanks. So infantry tanks, such as the Churchill and the Matilda, were big, slow, and could take a lot of damage. They were there to support infantry and provide covering fire, whereas the cruiser tanks, such as the Crusader, Cromwell, and Comet, were designed to bust through enemy lines, get around the back, and flank. However, the concept of a universal tank, also known as the main battle tank, really didn't come into play until after World War II with the development of the Centurion Mark I. The Centurion Mark I was originally designed as a cruiser tank, which is why it starts with the letter C. Don't ask me why the Churchill exists as an infantry tank. But it filled the role of a universal tank so well they decided to keep it. And further improvements on it were made, eventually making the Centurion Mark III, Mark V, Mark X, etc. This is irrelevant. But the purpose of a main battle tank is to have the speed of a light tank, armor of a heavy tank, and the weight of a medium tank. Basically, the perfect storm of positive qualities. So, in MMOs, so to get into the definition of tanking that we care about, this is a gaming term, and a tank is able to absorb damage. They either have high armor, high resistance, or just a shit ton of hit points. And they should also have some method of being able to draw fire onto them. So they have to have either a soft taunt or a hard taunt, like the warrior does in World of Warcraft, for instance. A secondary goal would be to be able to improve their teammates' defenses, and a tertiary goal... Oh, what am I doing here? I don't know what I clicked something. I think I'm in slideshow mode. Hold on. Can I just... Okay, I sorry about that. Just ignore the green man in the back. But primarily, they need to be able to take a lot of damage. Secondarily, they need to be able to taunt. And then further down the line, they need self-sustain in the case of lacking a healer, or they need to be the one receiving all the healing because they're absorbing all the damage. So tanking is a character who stands in the front, can absorb a lot of damage, and have some sort of retaliation. Examples of this are, as I said before, Warrior from World of Warcraft. If you went into more RPGs, a Pokemon like Snorlax would be classified as a tank because it has high HP, high special defense, and amazing self-sustain with rest and sleep talk, etc. So let's apply this to Pathfinder 2nd Edition. This was a document that I had... This was a meme that I had made that got me to top 20 on r/Pathfinder 2e. It still is top 20 r/Pathfinder 2e. The Pathfinder 2e alignment chart, based off the actual tank alignment chart, which is not shown, but basically Structure Purist was rotating turret, Structure Neutral has treads, Structure Radical is a land vehicle, right? So we have three types. We have two categories to think about: structure and doctrine. So based on the classical definition of a tank, they must be able to draw attention to itself to protect teammates and be trained in heavy armor. So what does one need in order to truly classify themselves as a tank? Is it sufficient enough to be trained in heavy armor and have a D10 or D12 hit die? Or sorry, 10 or 12 hit points per level. People are pedantic. We play Pathfinder. Pedantry is part of a part of the hobby. So is it sufficient enough to have high HP and high AC? Or do you need other abilities that involve taunts, as well as possible self-sustain? However, self-sustain is really easy to come by. It's called Take the Medic archetype. Duh. So let's talk about the purpose of this video. So not only is it to elucidate my thoughts on tanking, it's to talk about the new class that I'm about to push out. There is no class that truly serves as a tank because there is no class that has a true aggro mechanic. The champion, in my opinion, is the closest thing we have to a tank, but it does suffer from some aspects of it that are turn-offs to some people, and the elephant in the room here is deity. If you want to play an agnostic or atheist character, you cannot be a champion, right? Champions must be either good or evil at the posting of this video, and have to abide by certain tenets and edicts and if they perform anathema, then they lose all their powers, which sucks. As a result of that, all of their powers are coming from their deity. Let's make a class that has these defensive capabilities that don't require all these bells and whistles and getting their power from a higher being. They just need to be like really good with their armor. They train with their armor, but I don't want them to be a fighter. Barbarian can tank. They have aggro mechanics and come and get me, but barbarians are focused on dealing damage. They have no way to mitigate damage imposed on other players. Neither barbarian or fighter gets legendary in armor either, so I exclude them from this argument as well. Monk is also good. They do get legendary in armor. However, it's only an unarmored defense. They can't actually wear armor, and though they have decent crowd control with grappling and shoving and tripping and all those cool things, because they're usually unarmed as well, they don't have any way of directly reducing damage inflicted upon their teammate. So let's talk about the class that I am putting out. They would need to be able to prevent damage, not just mitigate. So the champion mitigates damage inflicted on teammates. This class should be able to prevent it completely, and they shouldn't rely on any sort of magic in order to do this. They must have excellent defenses, so they need to get legendary in armor class. They need to have at least 10 hit points, and they need to have good saving throws. If they're fully clad in armor, their reflex save is probably going to be crap. Mighty Bulwark solves this problem. So I've developed a class called the Ironclad. It is focused on armor and shields, and it uses their physical self in order to protect teammates, not using divine power or any sort of magic. So I had a lot of inspiration from this. If you've ever seen the famous video, The Wall from Dark Souls, or the Darkest Dungeon version, or the Pokemon version featuring Mega Aggron, that's a hilarious video using Mark Henry's theme song, The Wall. There's a lot of defensive classes that I enjoy in many video games, which include Rook from Rainbow Six Siege. He can add on an armor plate to himself and other teammates to bolster the defenses. The Rook in chess is designed to protect the king and has high mobility. Riva from One Step from Eden has a big shield that she uses, and she charges her shield points by moving around and can throw her shield. The Ironclad from Slay the Spire is a very obvious pick here. If you purchase the document, you take a look at the feats, you can tell that I took a lot of inspiration from the Ironclad from Slay the Spire. It's my favorite class from one of my favorite games of all time. And finally, real life tanks, because what would a tank class be if not an actual tank in real life? So let's talk about the proficiencies that I gave the Ironclad. Its key ability score is Constitution, which fills a design gap because currently there is no class that has Constitution as their key ability score. I also gave them 12 hit points per level, which is a lot. They have a lot of hit points. At level 1, it is certainly possible to have well over 20. An orc, a hold scarred orc was received 12 ancestral hit points, plus the 18 Constitution and 12 hit points afforded by this would give them a total of 28 hit points, which is a lot. Skills, they're basically average. I gave them all training in athletics, 1 skill in addition to that based on their subclass, and then 2 plus their int mod, and then of course you have your background skill and potentially skills trained from your ancestry feat at first level. Offensives, I was originally giving them only simple weapons and shields, but someone brought to my attention that it would feel really weird if they couldn't wield longswords, which is the classic sword and board fighter, or I guess, tank. So I ended up just giving them all simple martial weapons and training in all armor. I gave them progression similar to champion with their defenses. Saves, expert in fortitude and will, reflex only trained. Reflex doesn't improve until 9th level. So here is a look at their proficiency increases. This is standard martial. Increases weapons expert at 5, master 13, weapon specialization in the greater version 2 levels thereafter. Armor is going to be the same progression as the champion, and I believe the monk as well, 7, 13, 17. Saving throws, I gave them legendary and fortitude because I think they are a class that deserves it and should have it. Slightly slower than the barbarian, master at 7, and then legendary at 15 as opposed to 13. I feel like if I gave them legendary fortitude at the same time they got master in armor class, that would be a bit too much. So I delayed it by just a bit, but they deserve to have legendary and fortitude saves. Reflex saves are garbage. They don't get expert until 9th level, but they're going to be using a bulwark, so that kind of mitigates it. And I gave them the same progression as the rogue, master at 17, even though they get expert at 1. I think giving them master and will saves at any point earlier is kind of ridiculous, so I held off a bit there. And then perception, master at 11. That's basically par for the course. Later than 7, as you would see, the rogue, fighter, and ranger, but earlier than the barbarian, much earlier than the champion and monk also never get master in perception, but a class dedicated to protecting teammates should be an expert in perception. Sucks to be you, champion. Let's talk about class features. So the most interesting design choice that I had here was that their key ability score is Constitution and not Strength. However, carrying capacity is based off of Strength, not Constitution. Same thing with the Strength score of Armor. So the first level class feature that I gave them was Bulwark of Burden. Sorry, English is hard. Which allows you to swap Strength for Constitution when determining your armor check penalty. So if you had 18 con, you could wear full plate, no problem. In addition to that, you also gain +2 bulk. So you gain Hefty Hauler as a free bonus feat, which stacks with Hefty Hauler. It's nice, but once you get a bag of holding, it's kind of irrelevant anyways. They also get shield block at first level, and then they gain their first level class feature. It's a reaction called Interpose. You need to be standing adjacent to an ally, and if an enemy attacks your ally, you can use your reaction and they attack you instead. You gain resistance to the attack equal to half your level. We'll see it coming up. In addition to that, you gain your subclass at first level. We call it Protocol. I would have loved to call it Doctrine, but unfortunately that was already used for the Cleric. So if I could go back in time and change things, I'd have Cleric be something else, I don't care, and then allow this to be Doctrine, because Tank Doctrine would fit so well with the class. A missed opportunity there. Unfortunate, but we'll move on. Currently, I have 3. I have the Armored Artificer, which is all about crafting, so they augment their armor with all sorts of different abilities. They gain bonuses to using armor and shields. The Mobile Fortress is all about movement. They can wear heavy armor without any movement speed penalties, and they can just zip around the battlefield, despite the fact that they're fully clad in armor. And then finally, the Perpetual Protector is all about teamwork, and they give defensive bonuses to allies, so they would be able to increase their initiative checks and be able to act first. Perpetual Protector also gains the ability to sleep in medium and heavy armor at level 1. They get bonus. Their protocol improves at 11th level, and at 19th level, when their class DC improves to master, they gain what's called the immovable object. It's a bonus to interpose, and interposive resistance increases to your level as opposed to half your level. Let's talk about class feats. All of them revolve around defense and improving your defenses. There are feats for tower shields. There are feats to increase hardness of shields. There are some offensive abilities. We'll get into those later. From the last video, you saw Body Slam. It's an unarmed attack. You make an unarmed attack as a press, and you gain a bonus to damage equal to your armor's bulk, which I thought was pretty funny, and I think it's really fitting as well. There's a new stance called Phalanx Stance that we'll talk about in a bit, and I also included 2 new types of terms, reinforcements and responsive. A reinforcement is an extra layer that you add on top of your armor. You can only ever have 1 reinforcement per day. They don't sell for anything. Once you take them off, they're worth nothing. Others can't use it because it's so cumbersome. It's kind of like the Inventor's Armor, but instead of being a base armor, it's an attachment on top of it. So as we can see here, we have Active Camouflage, Spike Plating, and Explosive Reactive Armor. These each have different effects based on your level in crafting, and they each have a certain amount of uses per day. Responsive reinforcements are a certain subsection of reinforcements, and what they do is they trigger immediately, and the best part about them is you don't have to spend your reaction to use them. You take the feat, you add it at the beginning of your daily preparations. Whenever the trigger is met, the responsive reinforcement applies automatically, and you gain the benefits of it. So I have a feat called like Insulating Overcoat. Whenever you would take fire, electricity, or cold damage, the reinforcement activates immediately, and you resist the damage without having to spend any actions to do so, which is pretty excellent. All of these have training requirements in crafting, so sometimes you have to be expert, master, some even require legendary. But I know this is kind of outside of the realm of Pathfinder, so I applied the uncommon tag to all of these. The might not suit the theme of the campaign, and in low technology campaigns, you probably wouldn't have access to these. So I did put the uncommon tag on them just to make sure that people don't go willy-nilly with them. If this was common, I think it might cause some problems. So by keeping it uncommon, I'll put the burden of these in the GM's hands. And if you want to use them, that'd be great. If you don't want to use them, if you think they're out of context or overpowered, then you can just choose to exclude them. So speaking of things being overpowered, let's talk about balance issues. With 12 hit points and legendary armor and a legendary save and fortitude, is this class OP? Certainly, I don't think so, but I haven't playtested this from level 1 to 20, so I wouldn't know. I don't think the reaction is too strong. There is quite situational awareness, situational usage. Most notably, you can't be flanking with someone and be able to use this, so you have to be adjacent to them. There is a 6th level feat that covers this. It's called Swift Interpose. It lets you move 15 feet before you interpose. But there are a lot of stipulations here. And let's talk about Phalanx Stance. So this is a 1st level feat that I gave, and I think it's really cool. So you can wield a shield in one hand, and in the other hand, you can wield a 2-handed polearm spear. The damage does decrease by 1 step, but you are getting a one-handed reach weapon, basically. I was thinking about giving them clumsy. I don't think this is appropriate because you're supposed to be able to wield armor effectively and efficiently, and then weapons shouldn't be able to burden you because you're just so massive. And then let's talk about Goad Enemy. This is a feat that I ended up removing. This was the 2nd level feat, which basically was a hard taunt. You intentionally make yourself flat-footed, have enemies attack you. If they choose to attack you, you gain resistance to the attack. I think this is a bit too video gamey. I think this is a bit too strong. I ended up canceling it, but if there's enough demand such that people want it, I'd be more than happy to put it back in, maybe with some fine-tuning, maybe at a higher level. I'm definitely open to critiques here, and let me know. Yeah. So this is going to be out on Pathfinder Infinite in about 12 hours from the conclusion of this video. I'm going to be uploading this to YouTube more or less immediately, and then we can talk about it more. So I look forward to hearing your feedback on this. It was really fun getting to make another class. I do have some extra projects in the works. The Animal Companion Guide is probably not coming out because most of the animals in there were already in the Frozen Flame adventure path that just released. Other than that, I have a fun little archetype that I threw together. I might just throw it on Pathfinder Infinite, play what you want. It took me all of like 2 hours to make, and it's cute. It's a gambler archetype. I do want to create one more class to just finish off my homebrew projects. I think that a full dedicated caster is in the works. I haven't made anything yet. I've had a few ideas that have been bouncing around, but we shall see where the future takes us. So thank you so much for coming by to watch this video. Sorry about the weird presentation effects. I don't know what happened there, but I'm sure it's not that big of a deal. You can easily see the PowerPoint. It's whatever. The URL at the top is fine. So take care. Have a nice day. I'll be more than happy. Looking forward to seeing you in the next one. I do have the cleric guide finished. I just need to edit it and put it out. I don't have Adobe I don't have Adobe Premiere at the moment, so I'm gonna have to make another account for the 7-day trial, and we'll see where that goes. So expect that later on this week, and we'll go from there. Take it easy, enjoy yourselves, and yeah, if you're interested in this product, let me know. And I probably will make another video on this regarding what people think about it, and we'll address concerns and go from there. Until then, take it easy, and I'll see you in the next one.